The gunshot exploded through the mansion, and Esosa's scream died in her throat. June's body slammed against hers, pinning her to the marble floor as glass shattered overhead. His hand clamped over her mouth, his breath hot against her ear. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." Blood seeped through his white shirt, spreading like spilled wine across his shoulder. 3 weeks ago, she didn't know this man existed. 3 weeks ago, she was celebrating her 18th birthday in Benin City. Now she was trapped beneath a wounded Korean gangster while bullets tore through what was supposed to be her new home. But let's rewind. Let's go back to the moment everything shattered. Welcome to AfroKorean Stories. We share powerful narratives that bridge cultures and celebrate the human spirit. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. You won't want to miss what happens next. Esosa stood in her father's cramped living room in Benin City, smoothing down the yellow dress her mother had sewn for her birthday. 18. Finally an adult. Finally free to pursue nursing school like she'd always dreamed. Her younger siblings, Osaes and Ahai, decorated the small cake while Mama Blessing hummed in the kitchen. Everything felt normal. Everything felt safe. That's when her father, Vincent Odeji, emerged from his study with 2 men in dark suits. Korean men. Their eyes were cold, professional. They looked at Esosa the way someone might appraise a car before purchase. "Esosa, come here," her father said. His voice cracked. She'd never heard him sound like that. Broken. Defeated. She walked over, her heart beginning to hammer. "Papa, what's happening? Who are these men?" Vincent couldn't meet her eyes. One of the Korean men opened a leather folder and placed papers on the small table. "Miss Odeji, your father has entered into an agreement. You will travel to Seoul in 48 hours for an arranged marriage. Everything is prepared. Your visa, your tickets, your new life." The room tilted. "What? Papa, this is a joke, right? Tell me this is a joke." Vincent's hands shook as he reached for her. "Esosa, I had no choice. The debt, it was too much. They were going to take everything. They were going to hurt all of us. This way, you're protected. You'll be taken care of. You'll live in luxury, You sold me." Esosa's voice rose to a shriek. "You sold your own daughter?" Mama Blessing appeared in the doorway, tears already streaming down her face. She'd known. Somehow she'd known and said nothing. 150 million naira, one of the Korean men said matter-of-factly. "Your father's debt is cleared. You belong to June now. Our employer. Your husband. I'm not marrying anyone. I'm going to nursing school. I have plans, I have dreams, Esosa's voice broke into sobs. She looked at her father, searching for the man who used to carry her on his shoulders, who used to call her his princess. But that man was gone. In his place stood a desperate coward who traded his daughter for his own survival. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of tears and packing. Mama Blessing wouldn't speak, couldn't speak. She just folded Esosa's clothes with trembling hands, tucking small photos of the family into her suitcase. Osaes and Ahai didn't understand why their sister was leaving. They thought she was going to study abroad. Better that way. Better than knowing the truth. At the airport, Vincent tried to hug her. Esosa pushed him away. "Don't touch me. Don't ever touch me again." Those were the last words she spoke to her father. The 15-hour flight to Seoul felt like descending into hell. Esosa sat between 2 silent handlers, women who watched her every move. When she tried to talk to other passengers, they blocked her. When she tried to use the bathroom alone, they followed. She was cargo now. Property being delivered. Incheon Airport was massive, gleaming, overwhelming. A severe woman named Ms. Park met them at arrivals. "Welcome to Seoul, Esosa. I am June's household manager. You will address me as Ms. Park. You will follow all instructions. You will not leave the residence without permission. You will not contact your family without approval. Do you understand? I understand that I've been kidnapped, Esosa spat back. Ms. Park's smile was razor-thin. You've been saved from worse. Remember that. The car ride through Seoul's glittering streets felt surreal. Skyscrapers pierced the sky. Neon signs blazed in Korean characters she couldn't read. Everything was foreign, cold, unreachable. They drove into Gangnam, past luxury boutiques and into a gated compound that looked more like a fortress than a home. Armed guards. Security cameras everywhere. High walls topped with sensors. The mansion itself was beautiful and terrifying. All marble and modern art, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a manicured garden. Ms. Park led Esosa to a bedroom suite larger than her entire house back home. This is your room. Dinner is at 7. June will meet you then. Do not wander. Do not cause trouble. Esosa waited until she was alone, then collapsed on the bed and screamed into the pillow until her throat burned raw. At 7 sharp, Ms. Park returned and escorted her to a dining room with a table that could seat 20. At the head sat June. Esosa's breath caught despite her age. He was younger than she'd imagined, maybe late 20s, with sharp features and exhausted eyes. Handsome in a dangerous way. He wore an expensive black suit and didn't smile. Sit, he said in accented English. Esosa sat, her hands clenched in her lap. June studied her the way someone might study a painting they didn't particularly want but had purchased anyway. You're younger than I expected, he said finally. You're exactly as heartless as I expected, Esosa shot back. Something flickered in June's eyes. Amusement. Annoyance. He gestured to the elaborate meal spread before them. Korean dishes she didn't recognize alongside what looked like an attempt at Nigerian food. Eat. I'm not hungry. You will eat. You look half-starved from the flight. June's tone left no room for argument. He began serving himself, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. Esosa forced herself to take small bites, her stomach churning with each swallow. Why? She asked finally. Why me? Why this? June set down his chopsticks. Your father owed dangerous people money. Very dangerous. They would have taken you anyway, sold you to much worse situations. At least this way, you're protected. You have a home. You have safety. Safety. Esosa's laugh was bitter. I'm a prisoner. You paid for me like I'm furniture. You're my wife. I'm your slave. June's jaw tightened. The wedding is tomorrow. Civil ceremony. Quick. Then this conversation is over. I won't say yes. I won't agree to this. You don't have a choice. June stood, his tall frame casting shadows across the table. Your father signed the papers. Everything is legal. Everything is done. You can make this easy or difficult, but the outcome remains the same. He walked toward the door, then paused. I lost someone too. 3 years ago. My wife and daughter. Car accident. So don't think you're the only one suffering in this arrangement. He left before Esosa could respond, leaving her alone in that massive dining room with tears streaming down her face. The wedding the next day was everything a wedding shouldn't be. A sterile government office. A board official reading Korean she didn't understand. June signed papers. Ms. Park pressed Esosa's hand to an ink pad, stamped her thumbprint on documents. Done. Married. Owned. No white dress. No flowers. No love. Just transaction and documentation. That night, June didn't come to her room. Or the next night. Or the next. Esosa spent her days wandering the mansion like a ghost, watched constantly by cameras and staff. Ms. Park monitored everything, her presence a constant reminder of captivity. Esosa tried calling home once, but her phone had been replaced. The new one only had 3 numbers, Ms. Park, Dr. Han, the household doctor, and June. No international calling. No internet access. No escape. On the 5th day, Something inside Esosa snapped. She couldn't just sit and mourn. If she was going to survive this, she needed to do something, anything. She found the kitchen, a massive professional space that intimidated the household chef who barely spoke English. Esosa pushed past him and started cooking. Jollof rice. The way Mama Blessing made it. Tomatoes, peppers, onions, spices from the well-stocked pantry. The familiar motions soothed her, the aroma filling the space with memories of home. She didn't hear June enter until he spoke. "What are you doing?" Esosa spun around, wooden spoon in hand like a weapon. June stood in the doorway, wearing casual clothes for the first time she'd seen. Jeans and a simple black shirt. He looked almost human. Almost approachable. "I'm cooking," she said defensively. "Is that against the rules too?" June walked closer, drawn by the smell. "What is it?" "Jollof rice. Nigerian food. Real food. Not whatever that chef keeps making." Esosa stirred the pot aggressively. "You bought a Nigerian wife. You get Nigerian food. I didn't buy you. You paid 150 million naira. That's buying." June flinched but didn't argue. Instead, he pulled up a stool and sat watching her cook. The silence stretched, but it felt different than before. Less hostile. More curious. "My daughter loved spicy food," June said suddenly. Sujin. She was 4. She'd eat anything, no matter how hot, just to prove she was brave like her appa. His voice cracked on the last word. "My wife, me son, she was a nurse. She was driving home from a night shift when the truck hit them. Drunk driver. Both died instantly." Esosa's hands stilled on the spoon. She turned to look at him, really look at him. Behind the cold exterior, she saw a man drowning in grief. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I inherited my father's business after that. The criminal side, the legitimate side, all of it. I didn't want it. I was a music producer before. But my father died 6 months after my family, and suddenly I was responsible for hundreds of people, for operations I barely understood. I made deals I shouldn't have made. I trusted people I shouldn't have trusted." June's eyes met hers. "Your father's debt was one of those deals. By the time I realized what it meant, what was being arranged, the contracts were signed." Esosa served 2 plates of jollof rice, her hands trembling slightly. They ate in silence, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not empty. Full of unspoken things. June took his first bite and closed his eyes. "This tastes like home," he said softly. "Even though it's not my home. It tastes like love. Like family. I haven't tasted anything like this in 3 years." "Food is memory," Esosa said, surprised by the gentleness in her own voice. "My mother taught me that. Every meal carries the hands that made it." They talked until midnight. About loss. About dreams abandoned. About the weight of other people's choices crushing your own future. June told her about his music, the studio he'd built, the artists he'd worked with before everything collapsed. Esosa told him about her plans for nursing school, about wanting to help people, about her siblings who still believed she was living some grand adventure abroad. For a few hours, they weren't captor and captive. They were just 2 broken people sharing rice and grief. But the fragile connection shattered 3 nights later when the attack came. Esosa was sleeping when the first gunshot cracked through the night. She bolted upright, heart hammering. More gunfire. Shouting in Korean. Breaking glass. Her door burst open and June was there, blood already on his clothes, a gun in his hand. "Get down now." He dragged her to the floor just as the bedroom windows exploded inward. Bullets chewed through the walls, plaster raining down like deadly snow. June covered her body with his, one hand pressing her face against the cold marble, the other returning fire toward the window. Esosa couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was death. This was the end. "Safe room," June gasped. "We have to move." He pulled her up and they ran, hunched low, through corridors filled with smoke and chaos. June's men were fighting, but whoever was attacking had come prepared. They reached a hidden panel in June's office. He slammed his hand against a scanner and a steel door slid open. Inside, Esosa tumbled into a reinforced room lined with monitors and supplies. June followed, hitting the button to seal them in. That's when she saw the blood spreading across his shoulder. "You're shot." "It's nothing." But June's face had gone pale, his breathing ragged. "Sit down before you collapse." Esosa pushed him into a chair, her nursing training kicking in automatically. There was a medical kit on the wall. She grabbed it, her hands steadier than she'd expected. "Take off your shirt." June obeyed, wincing as he peeled away the blood-soaked fabric. The bullet had gone through his shoulder, exit wound visible on his back. Clean shot, but bleeding heavily. Esosa worked quickly, cleaning the wound, packing it with gauze, wrapping it tight. June watched her face the entire time, something shifting in his expression. "You're good at this," he murmured. "I've been studying since I was 15. I was supposed to start nursing school this year. Instead, I'm here, patching up a gangster who bought me." But there was no venom in her words now. Just exhaustion. "I'm sorry." June's voice was barely a whisper. "Esosa, I'm sorry. For all of it." She looked up, their faces inches apart. His eyes were dark, vulnerable, stripped of all pretense. "You should be," she said, but her voice shook. The moment hung between them, charged with something neither could name. Outside, the gunfire had stopped. Inside, their breathing synchronized. June lifted his good hand, touching her cheek with unexpected tenderness. "I wish I'd met you differently. In another life. Where you chose me. But I didn't choose you," Esosa whispered. "You took that choice away." "I know." June's thumb brushed her lips, and suddenly the space between them disappeared. He kissed her, and she didn't pull away. She should have. God, she should have pushed him away, screamed, fought. But instead, she kissed him back, her hands fisting in his hair, 3 weeks of rage and fear and loneliness pouring into that desperate connection. It wasn't love. It was survival. It was two drowning people reaching for anything solid. It was wrong and necessary and completely devastating. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Esosa touched her lips, shocked by her own actions. "We can't. I can't. This doesn't change anything." "I know," June said again, but his hand remained on her face, his forehead pressed against hers. They stayed in the safe room for 6 hours before June's head of security, a stern man named Tae-won, came to extract them. The attack had been repelled, but the mansion was compromised. "We need to move you to the mountain house," Tae-won said. "At least a week, maybe more. Until we identify who's behind this." The mountain house turned out to be an isolated cabin 3 hours outside Seoul, buried in forest near Busan. Just June, Esosa, and one guard stationed outside. No staff. No Ms. Park. No surveillance beyond the guard. It was the closest thing to freedom Esosa had felt since arriving in Korea, even though she was still technically trapped. June's shoulder was healing, but he needed help changing bandages. Every morning and evening, Esosa tended to him, their hands touching, their breathing sinking, that kiss in the safe room hanging between them like unfinished business. They cooked together in the small kitchen. They sat by the fireplace at night, talking until dawn. June taught her Korean words. Esosa told him stories about growing up in Benin City, about the neighborhood kids, about her mother's laugh. On the 4th night, June asked, "If you could go back, knowing everything you know now, what would you change?" Esosa stared into the fire. "I'd run. The moment those men showed up, I'd grab my siblings and run as far as possible." "Even knowing your father would face consequences?" "He made his choices. Why should I pay for them?" But even as she said it, guilt twisted in her chest. "I don't know. Maybe I'd try to find another way. Maybe I'd go to the police, Or, I don't know, someone who could actually help instead of just selling me off. June nodded slowly. After Mi-sun and Soo-jin died, my father asked me what I would change if I could. I said I'd have driven them myself that night. He told me that's not how life works. We don't get to rewrite the past. We only get to decide what we do with the pain. June turned to face her fully. I've made terrible decisions, Esosa. I've hurt people. I've become someone I hate. But meeting you, even like this, even in this horrible way, you've reminded me that I used to be human. That I could be human again. Esosa felt tears sliding down her cheeks. That doesn't make this okay. That doesn't erase what you did, what my father did. I'm still here against my will. I know. June reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope. That's why I'm giving you this. Esosa opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a passport, her passport, a plane ticket to Lagos dated for the following week, and a bank card. What is this? Your freedom. The marriage is annulled. The debt is cleared without conditions. That card has enough money to finish nursing school, to take care of your family, to start whatever life you want. You can leave. You can go home. June's voice was steady, but his hands trembled. Or you can stay. Not as my property. Not as payment for debt. But as someone who chooses to be here. Who chooses me, knowing everything, with complete freedom to walk away whenever you want. Esosa stared at the documents, her mind spinning. Freedom. Real freedom. She could leave. She could go home to Mama Blessing, to Osays and Ahai, to her old life. She could pretend these weeks never happened. But even as she thought it, she knew it was a lie. These weeks had happened. They'd changed her. And somehow, impossibly, June had changed too. Or maybe she was just seeing him clearly for the first time. I need time, she whispered. I need to think. Take all the time you need. The ticket is open-ended. The offer doesn't expire. June stood, wincing slightly as his shoulder pulled. I'm going to bed. Whatever you decide, Esosa, I want you to know that knowing you has been the first good thing in my life in 3 years. Even if you leave, even if I never see you again, thank you for reminding me what it feels like to be human. He left her alone with the fire and the documents and an impossible choice. Esosa sat there until the sun rose, turning the envelope over and over in her hands. Freedom or connection. Safety or possibility. The known pain of home or the unknown path with a man who'd kidnapped her but was offering her wings. She thought about her father's face when he'd signed those papers. She thought about Mama Blessing's silent tears. She thought about June's hands, gentle on her face despite the violence in his life. She thought about that kiss in the safe room, desperate and real. She thought about the jollof rice and the stories and the way he'd covered her body with his when the bullets flew. By the time June emerged from his room, Esosa had made her decision. She stood in the kitchen, making breakfast, the envelope sitting unopened on the counter. June saw it and his face fell. You're leaving. I'm staying, Esosa said, and watched hope bloom in his eyes. But not as your wife. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'm staying because I want to finish what I started. I want to enroll in nursing school here in Seoul. I want my own apartment. I want to date you properly, like normal people. I want you to dismantle whatever criminal empire you've inherited and build something legitimate. I want time to heal. Time to choose. And if at any point I change my mind, if I decide this isn't working, I leave. No questions. No consequences. Deal. June crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, careful of his injured shoulder. Deal. God. Esosa. Deal. Anything you want. Everything you want. She let herself sink into his embrace, still uncertain, still scared, but feeling something like hope for the first time since her birthday. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying this will work. I'm just saying I'm willing to try. That's more than I deserve, June murmured into her hair. Then he pulled back and kissed her, slower this time, sweeter. Not desperate survival but tentative possibility. Esosa kissed him back, her hands on his chest, feeling his heartbeat strong and steady under her palms. 3 months later, Esosa stood in the hallway of Yonsei University, staring at her acceptance letter to their nursing program. June had pulled strings, yes, but her entrance exam scores had been her own. She'd studied every night, relearning everything, proving to herself that she was more than what had happened to her. She had her own small apartment in Hongdae, paid for by the money June had given her. They had dinner twice a week. They texted constantly. They were learning each other slowly, carefully, without contracts or coercion. June was different too. He'd started liquidating the criminal operations, selling off territory, investing in legitimate businesses. It wasn't easy. People pushed back. There were threats. But Dr. Han, who'd become a mentor to both of them, stood by June's side, guiding him toward redemption. Ms. Park had been arrested for embezzling and leaking information to rival gangs, her betrayal a painful reminder that trust was earned, not bought. On Esosa's first day of classes, June waited outside with flowers. Real flowers. Roses and orchids arranged beautifully. "For my girlfriend," he said, the words still new and strange on his tongue. "The nursing student. The woman who saved my life and then saved my soul." Esosa took the flowers, breathing in their sweetness. "I didn't save you. We saved each other. Even better." June kissed her forehead. "Go. Learn. Become the nurse you were always meant to be. I'll be here when you're done." She believed him. And that belief felt like its own kind of freedom. 6 months after that, Esosa graduated top of her class. June proposed again, this time on one knee in the university courtyard, with a ring he'd chosen himself and a question that was really a question, not a command. "Esosa Odaji, will you marry me? For real this time. Because you choose to. Because you want to. Because you love me, not because you have to." Esosa looked at the man who'd bought her and then freed her, who'd broken her and then helped piece her back together. "Yes," she said. "I choose yes." They flew to Benin City for the wedding, a beautiful fusion ceremony that blended Korean and Nigerian traditions. Esosa wore both a white hanbok and Nigerian oso ebi. Her mother cried happy tears this time. Her siblings danced. And her father Vincent, dying from illness in a hospital bed, held Esosa's hand and whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Esosa squeezed back. "I know, Papa. I know." She never fully forgave him, but she made peace with the complicated truth that desperate people make terrible choices, and that survival sometimes costs more than anyone should have to pay. Back in Seoul, Esosa opened her clinic, a small shelter and medical facility for trafficking survivors. June funded it completely, using his resources to rescue others trapped in situations like Esosa had been. They helped 17 women in the first year alone. 17 lives reclaimed. 17 futures rewritten. On their 1-year anniversary of the real proposal, June and Esosa sat on their apartment balcony overlooking Seoul's glittering skyline. "Do you ever regret it?" June asked quietly. "Staying. Choosing this. Choosing me." Esosa thought about it honestly. "I regret how we started. I regret the pain. I regret that I didn't get to choose from the beginning. But I don't regret where we ended up. Because this, us, what we built from the ashes, this was my choice. And that makes all the difference." June pulled her close, and they sat in comfortable silence, two people who'd found love in the darkest place and chose to let it grow toward the light. If this story touched you, hit that like button and subscribe for more powerful narratives about survival, redemption, and the complicated nature of choice. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from, and share your thoughts on Esosa and June's journey. Could you forgive in her situation? Would you have stayed or left? Let's talk about it in the comments. Until next time, remember that your story isn't over until you decide it is. You always have the power to choose what comes next.